Yo, what's up guys? Josh, Magic Heart Poker here, back at our favorite spot, Resorts World, here to grind the 1-3 streets yet again. So yesterday we had a winning session, although it was a small one. It's still a win. I think in general for me, right, my goal is a lifelong fish or like losing player is just to become a profitable player. And the way you do that is to grind out session after session where you just play well, make positive EV decisions, and then just have a higher win rate, right? And also lose less, like minimize the losses, which I was happy 2 sessions ago I did minimize the loss. So if you guys are new here, basically I'm on a journey in the next 4 months to go from a poker fish to a poker pro. So around 3 weeks ago, I started getting coaching from Arrow Poker. Check out his channel. He's one of the best 2-5 players in Las Vegas, and he was nice enough to take me on as his Padawan. So yeah, I talk to him every day. I text him my hands, we meet up at least once a week. And just having him in my corner has just been so helpful. Like, I never would have imagined myself being at this point, being a profitable player in the small sample size. So with that being said, let's head on in. You know the motto, play tight, play right, and play in position.
So in the first notable hand of the session, under the gun limps, hijack limps, we look down at pocket nines in the small blind, and we decide to just limp here, and the big blind checks his option. Flop comes 3-2-6 with the club draw on board. I go ahead and check, planning to check raise, but unfortunately the action checks around. The turn is now a 9 of clubs, bringing in the front door flush draw, but also giving us top set. So I go ahead and plant the trap again by checking, and then the big blind fires for $10. Under the gun gets out of the way, the hijack calls, and I bump it up to $40, and only the big blind calls as the hijack folds. The river is now a 4 of hearts, which is relatively clean, unless he's sitting there with like ace 5 or some random straight combination. The other thing to be concerned about here in this hand is if he already has the flush on the turn, but I also feel like any flushes would have re-raised my raise, so not too worried. So I go ahead and bet $30 to try to get some value. But all of a sudden the big blind bumps it up to $110, and I think about it for a bit, but if we're being honest here, I'm not folding a set for $80 more. And I go ahead and make the call, and my opponent just mucks his cards. So no idea what he had, maybe he was just trying to represent a flush, but happy to take the pot down here. In hindsight, pocket nines is a strong hand, so I should have bumped it up pre-flop. And I also should have bet the flop as well as led the turn. As I play more 1-3 and just get the hours in, I'm learning there's no reason to slow play or like check raise and be super deceptive. With the exception being against good opponents, which you will occasionally run into. I feel like normally when I sit down, there's typically at least 1 or 2 good opponents. So against them, you can play a little more deceptively, but against the majority of the player pool who are just like, you know, not really thinking too much, you can just play pretty face up and just try to go to value town with strong hands. In this next hand, I look down at queen 9 of hearts on the hijack, so I bump it up to $15. The cutoff calls, and so does the small blind. Flop comes jack 4 king with 2 hearts, so we flop a flush draw. So when the small blind checks over to us, we continuation bet for a little less than half pot for $20. The cutoff folds, and the small blind makes the call. The turn is a 9 of diamonds, now giving us a pair, although it's not very strong on this board. So when the opponent checks to us, we go ahead and just check back. The river is king of spades, and now pairing the board. So when the opponent checks to us, we just check back and go to showdown. The opponent shows ace jack of hearts, so he beats us with the bigger pair, and we're pretty much just dominated in this hand. We're really glad the heart didn't get there, since that would have cost us a lot of money with a flush over flush situation, especially since I would have had a very strong flush, like pretty much the second nuts or third nuts if there's like a potential straight flush draw. So we lose the minimum. This is another reason why queen 9 of hearts is not a great hand. I think I want to eliminate this from my range as well. Lately, I've been playing a lot tighter, of course, a month later from this recording. And yeah, I just feel like queen 9 of hearts, the reason it's dangerous is because if you get the flush, you can run into nut flush. And then if you get a straight, you can run into a bigger straight. So I feel like with hands such as this, you're looking to flop strong, but you also don't want to pile the money in since you could be up against a more nutted hand. All right, so up until this point, even though the queen 9 suited hand was a bit loose, I feel like I was actually playing decently. However, one of the win dealers, Mario, sits down. I'm not sure if he watches the vlog, but super nice guy. He's a great dealer. However, this is the moment I realized I cannot play with this guy. So he offers to buy like a Jaeger shot. So I guess he likes drinking when he plays, and your boy hasn't drank in a while. I felt like I was feeling pretty confident, you know, have been winning lately. So I'm like, okay, nothing wrong with taking a Jaeger bomb with Mario, right? So then, as you can see right here, I take the Jaeger bomb. And then for whatever reason, I get a second Jaeger bomb. And bear in mind, I hadn't drank in months, if not like a year. So my tolerance is at all-time low, and when I used to drink, I would like chug my drinks. So obviously I still have the chugging skill, if we can call it that. But for whatever reason, I thought it'd be a good idea to chug a Jaeger shot and then play a hand for the content. Like, how cool would it be if I like took a shot and then, you know, won a sick pot, right? Not like you guys give a shit, but that was what was going through my mind at the time in this next hand. So as you can see, I just took the shot, and then I looked down at Queen 10 of clubs on the under the gun +1. So when there's one limper to me under the gun, I bump it up to $16, and the whole table basically calls low jack, small blind, big blind, and the under the gun limper. So we're going 5 ways to a flop of 9-8 king with the club draw on board. Pretty good flop for us, just because we have a gutter ball as well as the flush draw. So on this board texture, the small blind donks $15, the big blind and under the gun call, and I go ahead and raise the $65 with my draw. The low jack gets out of the way, the small blind calls, and the other 2 players fold. So I felt like the small blind was a lady who said she was just here for like a business conference or something. She was here for work, so it seemed like a recreational type of player, which should have kind of gave me some alarm bells because she's probably playing pretty face up. So on the turn, when it comes to 10 of spades, giving me a second pair, when the lady checks over to me, I go ahead and bet $150, basically just putting her all in since she shoves for $157, and then I make the call. The river's a 6 of hearts, so we totally brick out. We just have like second pair here. And then the lady shows king queen offsuit. So she had top pair, strong kicker, and then also a gutter ball. So yeah, we lose that one. And this is when I realized that when I drink, I play very loose as well as aggressive, but aggressive in the wrong ways. It's not like I play loose and aggressive when I have it. It's like I play very loose and aggressive when I'm playing draws, like semi-bluffing essentially here. So we lose the first big pot of the night. So here you see me taking Jaeger bomb number 3. As if 2 Jaeger bombs wasn't enough for my freshman tolerance, as I haven't been drinking at all, then this is the 3rd one, which pretty much derails the session. Just a disclaimer, you know, poker players love avoiding responsibility. So I'm just gonna blame my bad plays on the alcohol. So in the next notable hand of the session, under the gun +1, low jack and hijack all limp. I look down at Queen 10 of clubs on the cutoff, so I limp as well. Small blind comes along and the big blind checks his option. Flop comes 2 ace-7 with the club draw on board. So when the action checks over to me, I go ahead and bet $15. The small blind and big blind get out of the way. The under the gun +1 player calls, and then the low jack and hijack get out of the way. And one note is the one person that calls is like I would say he's a solid player. He kind of looked like Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank, Kevin O'Leary, but like a grumpier version. So yeah. The turn comes a jack of hearts, and now this guy bets $40, and I just make the call with my club draw. And then the river's an ace of spades pairing the board. He checks over to me, and I try to steal this pot and bet $90, and he calls quickly, showing ace-6 of hearts for trips. Yeah, honestly, on this board, I should have just checked the river back because, you know, this guy's not really floating with too much. Not to mention, this was a limp pot. Typically, when pots are multi-way, people aren't bluffing. I would say a mistake I've made, as you can see here, is trying to bluff in a multi-way pot when I don't have shit, because chances are someone has something, right? There's like so many hands going to the flop that it's kind of like PLO, right? It's like your second nuts is never good. So yeah, big mistake on this one. I paid off the one guy that he's probably not going to give the money back to the table. He's pretty much the vault. So, you know, $150 of mine pretty much locked up in the vault for the rest of the session. All right, so in this hand, we're in middle position and we have queen 7 suited. So when under the gun +1 opens at $13, we make the call for whatever reason, probably because we're 3 Jaeger bombs in and pretty drunk. The low jack and hijack also come along. Flop comes queen 3 king with 2 clubs. So there's a club draw on board and we flop middle pair, but the action checks through. Turn is a 10 of spades. So now this board is getting pretty connected. 2 flush draws out there, multiple straight combinations. So the under the gun +1 checks. I go ahead and check as well. The low jack now bets $25. The hijack and under the gun +1 get out of the way, and then I go ahead and make the call. The river's a 3 of hearts, which shouldn't change much unless someone has a 3 for whatever reason. So I go ahead and check, and the low jack bets $105. One quick note about the low jack is he's actually someone who's from Washington State. We're actually from the same area, and he's a super nice guy. He said he used to play poker professionally for a few years, but now he works in sales. He's basically just saying he likes his current job a lot better than playing poker for a living, just because there's like a guaranteed salary, less stress, benefits, all that stuff. But yeah, he was definitely a friendly guy. And for whatever reason, Maybe because I just thought that this sizing was like very polarizing. He's basically repping a monster or a bluff. And also I'm, playing more loose and aggressive than usual. I go ahead and make the call as a non-believer, and he shows us the bad news. He has Jack 9 of hearts for the turn straight. So pretty much second nuts on this board. Ace Jack would have been the nuts, and we lose this one. All right, so you guys know, since this is the Jaeger bomb episode, obviously the button straddle is on. Not like me being drunk is the reason for the button straddle. I just feel like I've been button straddling in like every episode, which, guys, is not the move. Do not button straddle unless everyone is doing it and it's shorthanded. Then I think it's fine. But anyways, the cutoff opens the $23. I go ahead and defend my straddle, looking down at King 10 offsuit on the button, and the small blind and big blind come along. Flop comes Jack 7 10 with 2 diamonds. So relatively okay flop for us, as we have middle pair as well as a backdoor straight draw. So the big blind now donk bets for $40. The cutoff, who's the original raiser, calls. I go ahead and call, and then the small blind gets out of the way. The turn is now the 8 of spades, bring a double flush draw on board with the diamond and spade draw. The big blind now slows down to checks. The cutoff, who's the original raiser, checks as well. Sensing some weakness, I bet $120, hoping just to take the pot down, as this is around a 60% pot bet. However, the big blind makes the call while the cutoff gets out of the way. The big blind being the LA lag guy from the previous episode, who we paid off when he had the full house and we had the straight. The river's a king of spades, which is not a good card, as a lot of straights get there, as well as any king X. And the river goes check, check. My opponent shows jack queen suited, so he actually had us dominated. Since if the queen hit, then he would have had a better 2 pair than us. So pretty much our only out on this board would have been a 9 for a chop. Yeah, a 10 or a 9 for a chop, basically. So yeah, we were absolutely crushed by this guy. I really don't like my play here. First off, the reason that button straddling is bad is you end up just widening your range to a point where it's not profitable. Like queen 10 on the button offsuit is definitely a fold to such a large range as $23. Another thing to point out is when people raise over a button straddle, typically the raise sizing is going to be almost twice as much as a normal raise. Like it could be $30 as opposed to $15. So it just increases the variance in your play. And yeah, I mean, queen 10 offsuit is a fold to a raise this large, since it's a non-made hand and it's not even suited. And on the turn, I should have just checked back because it's 3 ways. Yeah, the opponent checked to us, but we should still check back for pot control, since we're not really like ahead of much. As you saw, like any jack destroys us, and in this case we just value owned ourselves. So yeah, definitely not a good hand for me, Mr. Magic Heart Poker. All right, in this next hand we look down at ace 8 of hearts on the big blind. The hijack button and small blind all limp, and I just go ahead and check my option. No need to bloat the pot. I think if I want to, I could maybe raise to like $10 or $12 just to sweeten the pot in case I do hit, but in this instance for some reason I just checked. The flop comes 9-2-5 with 1 heart, so we flop nothing. However, we do have a backdoor heart draw. When the small blind checks over to me, I go ahead and check. The hijack checks as well, and then the button bets for $10. The small blind calls, and I go ahead and call as well with a dream of a backdoor flush draw, and the hijack gets out of the way. The turn is a jack of hearts, bringing us 1 step closer to that dream. So when the small blind checks over to me, I go ahead and check as well. The button bets $30, and then the small blind folds, and I go ahead and make the call. The river's an ace of clubs, so our dream doesn't get completed, but we do hit a pair. So when I go ahead and check over to the button, he goes ahead and bets $45, and I make the call. He shows 5-9 suited, so I was actually a bit surprised because this is the same guy from the earlier hand who was a really solid player. Like he wasn't really messing around, and I basically just donated $150 earlier to the vault when he had trip aces, and then here he had 2 pair and took me to Value Town. I do wish the hearts got there because I could have probably got some money off of him and gotten a rebate from the vault, taken some money out of the vault and put it back on the table. But yep, just donated some more money, around $90 back into the vault. So, 2 hands combined, donating to the vault around $240. Not good, not good. Typically, you don't really want to give money to the people who aren't going to give it back to the table. You typically want the people that are more active and splashier to have the money in this game. But people who are like rocks, you want to keep the money away from those kind of players, since the only way you're getting it back is by basically like hitting a better hand or like coolering them essentially. All right, in this next hand, the button straddle is on for $6. Middle position opens at $12, who I thought was a very splashy player, the type of player that you want to get involved with. And for whatever reason, when the low jack calls and I looked down at queen 4 suited on the cutoff, I justified my call. Also, I wasn't really thinking at this point. I was just basically gambling, right? Because I'm, 3 Jaeger bombs in, peak drunkenness. And yeah, I felt like this was probably an example of targeting where I'm just thinking like, oh, this guy's not that good, so I can call with worse hands. Not what you want to do. The way you outplay players that are playing too many hands or who you don't think are good is by playing better hands than them and then taking them to Valley Town when you have a better kicker or just a better hand. So anyways, the button and big blind also come along to this guy's $12 raise. So the flop comes 8-4 queen, 2 hearts. So we actually do flop pretty well here. We have 2 pair. The big blind and undergun check. The original raiser bets $15. Low jack gets out of the way. I go ahead and bump it up to $60. The button, big blind, and under the gun all fold, and then the original raiser makes the call. The turn's a 10 of spades, which is now putting a spade draw on board along with the heart draw. So when the opponent checks over to me, I bet $100, and he goes ahead and makes the call. The river's a 6 of hearts, which is a bit scary since the front door flush gets there. So when the opponent checks over to me, I just check it back. And then he shows ace king offsuit for ace high. Kind of a good example of why you want to play hands with these type of players. Like, that's an insta fold on the flop. Like, he's not really drawing to anything except for backdoor straight draw, which he actually did get a decent turn card, as well as an ace or king. But I had 2 pair here, right? Normally when people raise in the 1-3 streets, it's usually 2 pair or better. Maybe they're semi-bluffing with hearts there, but that ends up getting there on the river. So yeah, we scooped this pot, even though we were playing an absolute garbage hand and just got lucky on the flop. Okay, so at this point in the session, we're actually down quite a bit when this last hand hits. We're down around $738 to be exact. So yeah, this session hasn't gone our way at all. Normally we're like in the profit at this point or around even. Pretty much I was playing well until the Jaeger bomb hand. Then if you look at the chart, it just goes downhill from there. And then this last hand happens, which is the final hand of the night. The button straddles on for $6. The small blind, who's a guy that was getting a massage. So he came from a different table. He was getting a massage for a few hours there, then switched tables, then switched to a different masseuse, and then was running insane. Like VPIP, I felt like was 100% winning most spots. He had like 2 to 3K. Not to mention he was like also getting, a massage for another few hours. Like he probably spent, because the massages at Resorts World are $2 per minute. So that's $120 per hour. He's probably spent at least $600 on the base rate of massages, not to mention tips. So probably like close to $1,000 in massages, and he had a huge stack. So anyways, this guy calls in the small blind. I look down at pocket jacks in the big blind and I bump it up to $30. The straddler gets out of the way, and then the guy getting the massage now just puts me all in for my remaining $441, and I just snap call. So he shows ace king, just classic flip. We're basically a bit of a favorite. As you guys can see, the flop is actually quite favorable. It's queen, queen, jack, so we flop a full house. But for whatever reason, I just knew that this was not going to be good. So we can just play the clip here and hear the run out. So yeah, as you can see, the turn was a king, giving him now 2 pair, and then the river was another queen, so now he gets a bigger boat than me. And yeah, we bust out. We lose 3 buy-ins in this session. Not a good session. I actually ran this hand by Coach Arrow, and he just said this is a fold pre-flop. Like, in general, I think what I really like about Coach Arrow's philosophy is he avoids coin flip type of situations. He believes that it just increases variance, and the way you win money is by putting your money in good when you're a clear favorite. In this case, I was actually up against the best case scenario, and I had the best flop possible. But I could have easily been dominated by queens, kings, aces, where I'm very heavily weighted towards losing. So even though, it seemed like the move because this guy's VPIP was 100%. This is just another example of typically people know what they're doing. Like, although this guy was playing every hand and like running really well, he was still getting people to pay him off and betting in the right spots. So he wasn't one of those like loose passive players. He was definitely more loose aggressive. And he's also running hot, right? If I had to guess, we don't really want to be coin flipping against the guy who's winning every single hand. So learned the hard way on this one. Not to go all in for over 100 big blinds with jacks, but more importantly, to not drink at the poker table. So curious to hear your guys' take on drinking at the poker table. Do you guys do it? Do you guys not? Obviously, if you guys don't drink normally like myself, I personally don't recommend it since I just revert to my primitive instincts of playing loose and aggressive. So that's not profitable poker, especially in the 1-3 streets. Perhaps it might work in 2-5 or 5-10, but it also could lead to me getting absolutely crushed. So yeah, just would not recommend drinking at the poker table if you become more loose and aggressive.
All right, boys. So we just finished our session here at Resorts World. As you guys saw, it was a brutal one, guys. It was a brutal one. Note to self to never drink alcohol while playing poker again. $1,200 lesson. And yeah, I guess that last hand, Jacks versus Ace King, sums it up. 2% chance on the flop. But I mean, that's just the game, right? That's just poker. That's why I think it's one of those things where like, I really respect guys who play full time just because you got to handle these like variance downswings. And honestly, I don't think I deserve to win tonight. Because once I started drinking, like I only had like 3 Jaeger bombs, but like once I started drinking, I felt like I started going for a bunch of semi bluffs and bluffs. And yeah, I just wasn't playing my A game. So I think that's the beauty of poker is like, you know, you can never win like for sure, right? It's like the guy had 2% chance on the flop on that last hand, but like I can't get mad that, you know, I lost, right? Because pre-flop I'm only 57% favorite. So I think I even made a mistake. I could have folded there, but you know, I was too loose and gambly, right? So it's one of those things where even like I know like Coach Arrow was telling me he tries to avoid coin flip spots, and I could have easily been up against like queens, kings, or aces, but yeah, I mean, I think for me I have the hardest time playing against like kind of crazy guys who are super loose and like loose cannons, as you guys have seen the past few videos. Actually the biggest pots I've lost have been to like loose cannon type of players, but that's no mistake, right? Because I know I'm capable of being a profitable grinder, but today wasn't the day to, you know, make money because I just wasn't making profitable plays. I was like playing way too loose. My pre-flop range was all messed up. My bet sizing was like literally every aspect of poker was all fucked up, right? I can't even talk. So yeah, I think it's tough, but I feel like these are the moments that you know, I need to remember, and I need to hold myself accountable to avoid doing in the future, right? And like I even just texted Arrow how the session went and how it was shitty, right? But it was all self-inflicted. So I think walking away down 3 buy-ins was the move. Like there's no point in rebuying and keep trying to chase. And yeah, gotta get some sleep, live to see another flop, right? Poker is just one of those games where variance is a factor and you can't win them all, but the thing I can control is how I play, and I feel like I wasn't proud of my play today, right? So I think like before I started drinking, I was like very happy with how I played. I was playing really well, but then once I started drinking, like shit just went downhill. So yeah, from now on, just avoid drinking, and it's all good, right? I feel like that's part of the process, part of the journey. I think you know, these type of losses are what build you up, right? It's not just like if I was winning every single session, I feel like there's nothing for me to learn. So I know exactly what I did wrong today. I was just way too loose pre-flop, chasing way too much, just not playing the way Coach Arrow taught me. Maybe change up the spot a little bit. I could be getting too comfortable with the Resorts World. Maybe next vlog I'll try playing at the win. So we'll see. Stay tuned. $1,200 loss today, but you know, we're gonna keep going, keep trying to grind, and continue to play hopefully some profitable poker.